The twin suns of Nirtha burned bright over the shimmering metal of the diplomatic space station. The corridors glowed in golden light as humans and aliens walked side by side. Pretending centuries of mistrust were gone, Ethan Cole, a human engineer from Earth, had only one job: to repair a translation drone before the big peace conference began. He wasn't a soldier or a diplomat, just a quiet man with grease on his hands and curiosity in his eyes. As he knelt near a hollow console, sparks burst from the damaged device. He frowned and reached for his toolkit. When he looked up, someone small stood right in front of him. Her fur glowed faintly in the light, silver with streaks of blue. Her ears, cat-like and twitching, tilted forward with curiosity. "Are you fixing it?" she asked, her voice soft. Almost musical, Ethan smiled. "Trying to," he said, then noticed her large golden eyes studying his hands. "You're human," she whispered. As if saying something forbidden, Ethan chuckled. "Last time I checked," he replied. She crouched beside him, tail swaying gently. "My name is Linara," she said. "I'm not supposed to talk to you, but you look different." Before he could respond, she leaned closer, inspecting the translator chip in his palm, and suddenly sat right on his lap. Her fluffy tail brushed his arm, and he froze, not knowing what to do. The nearby guard stiffened. Murmurs filled the corridor. Then everything went silent. From the far end of the hall, a deep rumble echoed, a voice that could silence an army. "Step away from her," it said, cold and sharp. Ethan looked up and saw a towering figure entering. His armor shimmered like liquid steel, and his eyes burned red with fury. It was High Emperor Valar, ruler of the Felieri Empire and Linara's father. Ethan's heart pounded. He hadn't meant to offend anyone, but the way everyone stared, he knew he'd just broken a royal law. Linara blinked, confused. "Father?" she asked softly, but Valar's gaze stayed locked on Ethan. "Human," the Emperor growled. "Do you understand what you've done?" Ethan swallowed hard. "She just wanted help," he said calmly. "Her bracelet was broken." The Emperor's voice thundered again. "No human touches the royal bloodline," he said, stepping forward. The guards aimed plasma lances, ready to strike. Linara stood in front of Ethan, spreading her small arms. "He didn't do anything wrong," she cried. "I sat with him first." Her father hesitated, his expression flickering with shock. No one had ever defied him, not even his generals. The tension grew thick like fog. The human delegation, standing nearby, whispered nervously. Earth couldn't afford another war, not after the Orion conflicts. Ethan slowly raised his hands. "Your Majesty," he said, voice steady despite the fear in his chest. "I didn't mean disrespect. I fix things. That's all." The Emperor's crimson eyes narrowed. "Then fix your mistake," he hissed. Ethan didn't move. Instead, he looked straight into those terrifying eyes and said, "I fix what's broken, not bow to it." Gasps filled the hall. Even the guards stepped back. The Emperor froze, his anger meeting something he hadn't felt in centuries. Defiance, but not arrogance. There was something human, something honest. Linara's eyes widened, her tail flicking with awe. For a long moment no one breathed, then the Emperor turned sharply. "Take him to the royal chamber," he ordered. "I will decide his fate myself." The guards grabbed Ethan's arms roughly, but he didn't resist. He glanced once more at Linara, who looked both guilty and afraid. "I'll be fine," Ethan whispered to her as they dragged him away. In the throne hall, with its glass floors and cosmic banners, Ethan was forced to kneel. Valar paced slowly around him, his cloak whispering across the marble. "You humans think you can touch the stars," the Emperor said. "But you still don't understand respect," Ethan replied. Voice firm. "Maybe not your kind of respect, but I respect her curiosity." "I didn't fear it." The Emperor stopped, looking down at him. "Fear keeps the weak alive," he said coldly. "Maybe," Ethan answered. "But trust builds more than fear ever could." The Emperor stared at him in silence, his claws twitching at his side, and then finally said, "You have courage, human, but courage without wisdom is suicide." Ethan lifted his chin. "Maybe, but it's better than silence." That line struck the Emperor harder than any weapon. He turned away, deep in thought, for the first time in years. Someone had spoken to him not as a ruler, but as a father. He looked toward the door where his daughter still waited, her golden eyes filled with worry, and something inside him softened just slightly. "Release him," the Emperor finally said, his voice quieter. "But, my lord," a guard protested. "He touched—" "I said release him," the Emperor repeated, his tone final, The guard stepped back. Ethan stood slowly, rubbing his wrists. He met the Emperor's eyes again, neither bowing nor challenging. Just meeting him with quiet respect, Valar gave him a long look, then said, "You have no idea what you've done, human. You may have just changed everything." As Ethan walked out, Linara ran to him, smiling shyly. "I knew he wouldn't hurt you," she said. He smiled back. "Let's hope you're right," he whispered. Behind them, the Emperor stood at the window, watching the twin suns burn above the station. His world had just shifted, and deep inside, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, uncertainty. And that was how it began. A human's kindness, an alien's curiosity, and a single moment that would shake an entire galaxy. The air inside the royal chamber felt heavy, glowing with a strange mix of gold and crimson light. Ethan stood between two armored guards, his wrists bound by magnetic cuffs that hummed softly. He had been silent since they brought him here, watching, waiting, trying to understand what was going on. High Emperor Valar sat on his towering throne, his claws tapping against the armrest. The sound echoed like thunder. Each tap meant anger restrained, not gone. Before him stood his daughter, Princess Linara, her fur slightly bristled, tail flicking nervously. She looked small against the grand hall filled with alien nobles whispering among themselves. "This human insulted our bloodline," one noble hissed. "He must be punished," another added. "His kind has no place near the royal crest. He should be executed before the sun sets." Linara stepped forward, voice trembling but clear. "He didn't insult anyone. He helped me when no one else did," the nobles gasped. A princess defending a human was unthinkable. Valar's eyes narrowed, glowing brighter. "Linara." "Silence," he said, his tone sharp. "But she didn't stop, Father," she continued. "You always told me courage means doing what's right, even if everyone stands against you." Valar rose from his throne, towering over her. "Do not twist my words." "Child," he growled. She met his gaze. "Then don't twist his actions." The chamber froze. No one dared breathe. A royal daughter challenging her father, the Emperor, was something never seen before. Valar's claws tightened, sparks of plasma flaring between his fingers. The guards tensed, unsure whether to intervene or run. Ethan watched the scene, heart racing but mind calm. He took a small step forward. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "please. She's only trying to protect what she believes is right." The guards shoved him back roughly, but the Emperor raised his hand, signaling them to stop. His gaze burned into Ethan. "You speak when not spoken to," Valar said. Voice like steel, Ethan nodded slightly. "Then speak to me, and I'll answer." A dangerous silence filled the room. The nobles exchanged horrified looks. No human had ever spoken to the Emperor like that. But Linara smiled faintly, her ears twitching. She could sense something was changing. Valar descended from his throne slowly, each step echoing across the chamber. His massive form stopped inches away from Ethan, towering over him like a living mountain. "Tell me, human," the Emperor said, "why do you not kneel before me?" Ethan met his gaze. "Because I didn't do wrong. Kneeling is for guilt, not honesty." Gasps rippled through the hall. One of the nobles shouted, "Insolence!" But the Emperor silenced him with a glare. Valar leaned closer, his deep voice low and cold. "You touched my daughter, a sacred act among my people." Ethan frowned slightly. "I didn't know it was sacred, where I come from. Helping someone is just what we do." The Emperor's tail lashed. "Among the Felyari, placing someone on your lap is a sign of protection, of bonding. You have marked her before the gods." Ethan blinked, realization hitting him like a punch. He opened his mouth to explain, but the Emperor's next words stopped him cold. "In our law, such a gesture can only happen between mates." The room exploded with shocked whispers. Linara's fur fluffed up in embarrassment. Her eyes wide as moons, Ethan's face went pale. He hadn't even known such a rule existed. "I didn't mean—" he started, but the Emperor raised his hand again. "I know," Valar interrupted. "That's what makes it worse." He turned to his council, his deep voice echoing through the hall. "By our law, this human's life now rests with the Royal Council's vote. If found guilty of defilement, he will be executed at dawn." The crowd murmured approval, their tails swishing, eager for blood. But Linara stepped forward again, shouting, "No! He didn't claim me. I chose to sit there. I made the mistake." Her father turned, shocked by her outburst. "Linara, you don't understand." "I understand that if you kill him, there will be war," she said. "The humans won't stay silent." Ethan's heart sank as he looked around, realizing the same thing. One small misunderstanding between species might destroy everything the Peace Council worked for. Valar clenched his fists, the light around him flaring brighter. "Enough," he thundered. "I will not hear more," he pointed at Ethan. "Guards, take him to the lower chambers until the council decides his fate." The guards grabbed him again. Pulling him toward the exit, Linara tried to follow, but her father's voice stopped her. "Stay," he ordered. "You've done enough." The door closed with a deep metallic thud, leaving Linara trembling in silence. Hours later, in the Emperor's private chamber, Valar stood alone, staring at a holographic map of the galaxy. His mind replayed Ethan's words. "I fix what's broken, not bow to it for some reason." Those words stayed with him. He had crushed empires, silenced rebellions, and demanded obedience from billions. Yet a single human engineer had dared to speak to him without fear. "Perhaps," he muttered to himself, "humans are not as simple as I thought." Meanwhile, in the dark cell below the palace, Ethan sat on a metal bench whispering to himself, trying to stay calm. He thought of Earth, of the blue sky and the wind that didn't smell like metal. Then he thought of Linara, her bright eyes, her gentle voice, and for the first time, he realized how strange fate was. He had come to fix a drone, but somehow ended up breaking interstellar peace. In the corridors above, rumors were spreading. Alien officers whispered, "The human has bonded with the royal heir." Some wanted his death. Others wanted to see how this story would end. And deep inside the palace, Princess Linara sat in her chamber, looking at the stars, whispering softly, "I won't let them hurt you, Ethan," because somewhere between accident and destiny, something had already begun. Something that neither war nor law could stop. The stars above Nirtha shimmered like scattered embers across the void. Outside the royal palace, ships from dozens of alien races hovered in silence, waiting, watching. The entire galaxy had heard the rumor now. A human had touched the Felyari princess. Inside the vast corridors of the Imperial Citadel, whispers slithered through every hall. Each word carried weight, each rumor carried danger. In his dimly lit cell, Ethan sat quietly, his hands resting on his knees. The cold metal walls pulsed with a soft blue glow. He didn't know how long he'd been there, maybe hours, maybe days. The only sound was the steady hum of the generators above. He thought of Linara often, wondering if she was safe, wondering if her father had already decided his fate. He had seen war before on Mars Colony. He knew what fear and hate could do when mixed with pride, and now he could feel history twisting again, all because of a single misunderstanding. Suddenly the cell door opened with a hiss. 2 guards entered, their armor glinting under the blue light. "The council demands your presence," one said coldly. Ethan stood, his legs stiff but steady. They led him through long corridors lined with glowing runes and towering statues of past emperors. He could feel eyes on him. Nobles, soldiers, servants, all staring at the strange human who had brought chaos to their empire. The council chamber was circular, with floating platforms arranged in a ring. Dozens of alien leaders floated in their thrones, their eyes glowing in colors beyond human understanding. In the center, Emperor Valar stood beside Princess Linara. Her ears drooped, her tail coiled nervously around her waist. When Ethan entered, she looked up quickly, her golden eyes full of worry and guilt. "Human," a voice echoed through the chamber. "You are accused of performing an ancient bond ritual with the heir to the Felyari throne. What say you in your defense?" Ethan took a deep breath. "I didn't know your customs," he said calmly. "Where I come from, we help people because it's right, not because of law or ritual." The chamber filled with murmurs, some curious, some angry. A tall alien with horns hissed, "Ignorance is no excuse. Human arrogance must not go unpunished." But before Valar could respond, a transmission flickered into existence. The holographic face of Ambassador Juno Reeves from the United Earth Federation. "Your Excellency," Juno began, her tone sharp but respectful. "Humanity seeks peace, but if harm comes to our citizen, we cannot guarantee restraint." The chamber went silent. The meaning was clear. If Ethan died, war would follow. Valar's claws flexed slightly. He had fought wars for less, yet now his heart felt heavier than ever. His daughter's gaze pierced through him like light through glass. "Father," Linara said softly, "this isn't about honor anymore." "It's about understanding." The Emperor turned away. unwilling to meet her eyes, but the words struck him deep. Outside the palace, fleets began to move. Human dreadnoughts and alien warships faced each other across the silent dark. Every captain waited for a signal. One spark, and the galaxy would burn. Meanwhile, in the lower halls, Linara found Ethan alone after the meeting. She dismissed the guards and whispered, "They won't listen. They think our bond is real. They think you meant to take me." Ethan looked at her puzzled and a bit amused. "Take you? I can't even get out of this palace without tripping an alarm." She smiled weakly, but her eyes glistened. "It's not funny, Ethan. If the council votes for punishment, my father will be forced to act." Ethan sighed. "Then we change the story," he said. "We make them see the truth." "But how?" she asked, her ears twitching nervously. Ethan looked around the glowing hall. "By fixing what's broken," he said quietly, starting with their faith in each other. That night, deep in the Emperor's war room, his generals gathered. Maps and holograms floated above the table, showing human fleets, supply lines, and Felyari strongholds. "Your Majesty," one general said, "we must strike first." "Before they strike us," another added. "If we wait, they'll bring reinforcements. Humanity is not to be trusted." Valar remained silent, his gaze fixed on the image of Earth's flag, a symbol of defiance and resilience. Finally he spoke, his voice low but firm. "When I look at that flag, I don't see defiance. I see survival." The room went quiet. The generals exchanged uneasy looks. He turned away, his mind storming with conflict. His pride screamed for vengeance, but something deeper whispered for patience. In the palace garden, Linara stood under the twin moons. Looking at the stars, a soft breeze moved through her fur. She whispered to the night, "If war comes, I'll stand with him," as if hearing her. The wind carried her words through the palace walls. Reaching the Emperor himself, he stood by the window, hearing echoes of his daughter's voice and Ethan's defiant words. That same night, across the void, the human ambassador sent a secret transmission to Ethan's cell through his comm implant. "Ethan, listen carefully," she said. "The Felyari Council will vote tomorrow. If they choose death, our fleets will retaliate. You need to stop it before then." Ethan's voice was calm but tired. "I'll try," he said, "but I'm running out of time." The next morning, the sun rose red over Nirtha's horizon, casting long shadows across the palace. The bells of judgment began to toll, each sound echoed across the empire, calling its people to witness from every world. Beings tuned into the broadcast, a human standing trial before an alien empire, and far above them all, hidden in orbit, the human fleet prepared for what might be their final command. If the verdict was guilty, the stars themselves would burn. The great judgment hall of the Felyari Empire stood silent. The twin suns shone through the crystal dome, throwing long golden beams across the marble floor. Every corner of the galaxy watched through live transmission. The air was tense, heavy, waiting for one single decision that could decide between peace and war. Ethan stood in the center of the hall, his wrists free now but his fate chained by politics. Around him, alien nobles sat in their floating thrones, whispering in low tones. Some looked at him with disgust, others with curiosity. At the far end of the hall sat Emperor Valar, his armor gleaming, his tail still as stone. On his right stood Princess Linara, her ears lowered, eyes bright with fear and determination. The royal herald's voice boomed through the chamber. "The Council of Stars shall now vote on the human's fate. Speak and the galaxy shall hear." One by one, alien voices echoed across the chamber. "Guilty, guilty, exile, execution." Each vote struck like a hammer against Ethan's heart. Valar's expression remained unreadable, but deep inside, his thoughts twisted between duty and doubt. He had been raised to protect his people, yet every instinct in him whispered that killing this human would be wrong. He looked at his daughter and for the first time, saw the quiet fire of courage in her eyes. Then, before the final vote was cast, Linara stepped forward, her voice cutting through the silence. "Stop," she said. Every noble turned, shocked. "This is not your place." "Princess," one barked, but she ignored them. She walked into the center beside Ethan, her tail curling nervously but her chin held high. "If this trial is about me, then I have the right to speak," she said. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Linara," he warned, but she continued. "I am not ashamed of what happened," she said clearly. I sat on his lap. I touched him first. "If your law says that means we are bonded, then so be it." Gasps filled the chamber. The sound spread like wildfire across the live broadcast. Millions of aliens watching from distant worlds froze in disbelief. Ethan's eyes widened. Linara, don't. But she placed her hand on his arm, stopping him. I would rather bond with the man who showed kindness than rule beside cowards who fear change, she said, her voice steady now. The council erupted in chaos. Shouts echoed, "Blasphemy! Disrespect! She has defied the throne!" Guards rushed forward, but the emperor raised his hand, silencing the room. His expression was unreadable, his aura shifting between rage and sorrow. "Do you understand what you have done?" Valar said slowly, his voice deep and trembling with emotion. "Yes," Linara answered softly. "For once in my life, I did what I believe is right." For a long moment, there was silence. The entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then, without warning, an explosion shook the hall. The floor trembled, lights flickered, and the grand window shattered. A voice boomed over the palace intercom. "This is General Kor. The Feliari will not bow to humans or weak rulers." Outside, the sky turned red as rogue battleships opened fire on the palace shields. Blinding flashes filled the horizon. The coup had begun. Guards rushed to protect the Emperor. Ethan grabbed Linara's hand, pulling her behind a fallen pillar. "We need to move," he shouted. She hesitated, looking toward her father. "We can't leave him." Ethan looked back. The Emperor was surrounded by his elite guards, deflecting plasma blasts with his blade that shimmered with ancient energy. Another explosion tore through the wall, throwing Ethan to the ground. His vision blurred. He heard shouts, screams, and the hiss of burning metal through the smoke. He saw a shadow approaching. General Kor himself, his armor cracked and eyes wild with fury. "Human filth," the general spat, raising his blaster. "You brought ruin to our people." Before he could fire, the Emperor struck, his blade slicing through the air, deflecting the shot and slamming into Kor's chest. The general fell, armor cracking. Gasping his last breath, Valar turned toward Ethan, his face dark with pain and pride. "Take her," he commanded. "Get her to safety." "But you'll—" Ethan started. "Do not argue, human," the Emperor barked. "If you truly fix what's broken, then save what I could not." Ethan nodded once, grabbing Linara's hand. Together they ran through the shattered corridors as the palace burned. Behind them, the Emperor stood firm, holding off the traitor forces with the fury of 1,000 suns. They reached the hangar, alarms blaring, fires licked the walls, and starships were erupting one after another. Ethan pulled Linara into a small maintenance craft. "Hold on," he said, pressing the ignition. The ship lifted, shaking violently as explosions rocked the platform. Through the cockpit window, Linara saw her father one last time, standing tall amidst chaos, glowing like a god of war. The ship burst into the sky, leaving the burning palace behind. Linara covered her face, tears streaming down her fur. "He stayed behind for us," she whispered. Ethan put a hand on her shoulder. "He stayed behind for peace." As the stars stretched around them and the ship vanished into hyperspace, Ethan looked back at the fading planet, knowing that everything had changed. The galaxy was now on the edge, but somewhere inside that chaos, hope had been born because one emperor had chosen trust over pride, and one princess had chosen love over fear. The stars shimmered like cold diamonds against the black ocean of space. The small ship drifted silently through the void, its engines barely humming. Inside, Ethan and Linara sat together, the light of the twin suns fading behind them. Neither spoke for a long time, both still hearing the echo of explosions that had consumed the Feliari palace. Linara's golden eyes were red from crying. Her ears drooped low. "I can still see him standing there," she whispered. "My father never looked afraid before, but when he told you to take me—" "I saw it." Ethan leaned back in the pilot's chair, his voice low. "He wasn't afraid of dying. He was afraid of losing you." The silence that followed was heavy but warm. They had lost a world, but somehow gained something else. A fragile thread of trust between two very different lives. As the ship entered human territory, messages started coming in. Earth's fleet had received their distress call. Admiral Rena's voice crackled through the comm. "Ethan Cole, this is Fleet Command. You're safe now. We're tracking your beacon." Ethan sighed in relief. But Linara's expression turned worried. "Safe for you, maybe, but for my people, they'll call me a traitor." He turned toward her, his face serious but gentle. "You stood for peace when everyone else wanted war. That's not betrayal, Linara. That's courage." She gave a small, sad smile. "Humans use strange words for pain," she whispered. her tail wrapping around her knees. Hours later, their ship docked with the Earth flagship Resolute. The corridors were filled with officers staring in awe at the alien princess beside Ethan. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed. The whole galaxy wanted to know who the human was that escaped with the Felyari heir. Inside the command chamber, Ambassador Juno Reeves greeted them. "Ethan, you've caused more trouble than 10 politicians combined," she said, half smiling, half serious. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, I kind of noticed." But Juno's gaze softened when she looked at Linara. "Princess, your father's sacrifice prevented total war. Humanity owes him more than we can say." Linara bowed her head. "He didn't do it for humanity, he did it for truth," she said quietly. "And for me soon." News spread across both civilizations. The story of the human engineer and the alien princess who defied tradition reached every corner of the galaxy. Some called it scandal, others called it prophecy. The Felyari Council tried to hide the truth, claiming the Emperor died in glory. But secret recordings of his final order, protect the human and the heir, leaked to the public. And the galaxy began to change. Weeks passed. The human and Felyari fleets stopped pointing guns at each other. New talks began, this time not with diplomats, but with people who had seen the cost of pride. Linara attended every meeting beside Ethan, translating between two hearts of two races who had never truly listened. One evening, as they stood on the observation deck of Resolute, the stars reflected off the glass like scattered memories. Linara spoke softly. "When I first met you, I thought humans were loud and reckless." Ethan smiled. "We are, most of the time. But you fixed my bracelet that day," she said, looking down at the small device still on her wrist. "And somehow you fixed much more than that." He turned to her, his eyes warm. "Maybe I didn't fix it, maybe we just found what wasn't broken to begin with." Outside the viewport, a transmission flickered to life. A recorded message sent days before the Emperor's death. His deep voice filled the chamber, calm and powerful. "My daughter, if you see this, I am gone," he said. "I fought for honor all my life. But I see now that honor means nothing without understanding. This human, Ethan Cole, showed me that strength is not in fear, but in trust. Protect him as he has protected you." Linara covered her mouth, tears welling again. Ethan stood beside her, silent, feeling the weight of those words settle deep in his heart. Months later, the Treaty of Nirtha was signed. It declared peace between humans and the Felyari, recognizing both races as allies under a new galactic council. On the day of the signing, Ethan and Linara stood together as symbols of unity. The cameras flashed, the crowd roared, and for the first time in centuries, two worlds smiled together. When the ceremony ended, Linara looked up at Ethan. "Do you think my father can see this?" she asked. Ethan looked out toward the stars. "If he can, I bet he's still glaring at me." Linara laughed softly, her ears twitching. "Maybe, but this time, he'd be proud." The twin suns rose again over the new Alliance world, bathing everything in gold and across the galaxy. A single story echoed among billions. A story of a human who dared to stay calm before an emperor, and a princess who dared to love what her people feared. In the end, peace didn't begin with a treaty or a battle. It began the moment a cat-eared princess sat on a human's lap, and he chose not to let go.